Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
For 200 years, scientists called it unsolvable, a bronze object that Rome never documented, never explained, never acknowledged existed. Then, in 2025, a team of metallurgists finally cracked
Strange about them is that there is no record of what they were used for. And it's still quite a puzzle and a mystery to historians what function they actually serve.
And the answer wasn't just unexpected, it was impossible. The object wasn't Roman. It was 150 years older than Rome's invasion of Britain, older than Roman contact with the region entirely. And sealed inside its hollow chamber, researchers found traces of cremated human bone fused with ritual substances that match no known Roman practice. But here's what made Dr. Elena Richter, a 23-year veteran of Roman bronze analysis, call her department head at 11 p.m. The construction, the alloy, the geometric precision, none of it matched anything in the Celtic archaeological record either. This object predates Rome, but it also defies every civilization we thought we understood. "We need to talk," she told him, "and you're going to want to sit down." The object that shouldn't exist. So, here's the deal. When we think of ancient Rome, we imagine precision, aqueducts stretching across continents, roads engineered to last millennia, an empire built on documentation and absolute control. The Romans wrote everything down: military manuals, tax records, recipes, even bathroom graffiti. They cataloged their world with obsessive detail, and yet they never once mentioned this. The Roman dodecahedron is a small, hollow bronze object with 12 perfectly formed pentagonal faces. Each face is pierced by a circular hole. No two holes are exactly the same size. At every corner sits a rounded knob, carefully cast and sometimes individually soldered. The craftsmanship is extraordinary, the purpose completely unknown. But here's the catch. Archaeologists have cataloged just over 130 confirmed specimens. That number alone creates the first red flag. Roman manufacturing produced objects by the thousands: coins, tools, weapons, pottery. Yet these objects number barely over 100 across the entire former empire. And get this, every single dodecahedron has been found in the outer provinces: Britain, Gaul, Germania. Not one has ever been recovered from Rome itself, not one from Italy, not one from the Eastern Mediterranean. For an empire obsessed with standardization, that geographic silence is impossible to ignore. What most people don't realize is the silence goes deeper. Despite thousands of Roman reliefs depicting tools, rituals, and daily life, not a single image anywhere shows a dodecahedron. No carving, no fresco, no mosaic, no mention in any surviving text. Someone didn't just forget them, someone erased them. Every theory about what this object was would collapse, but the truth about what it contained would terrify the researchers who finally opened one. Theories that died. Candlestick holders, that was the first theory. Clean, simple, wrong. No wax, no scorch marks, no soot, not on a single specimen. Military rangefinders came next. Soldiers supposedly aligned the holes to estimate distance, but the holes vary wildly in size, even on the same object. No calibration, no carrying cases, not a single dodecahedron was found near military equipment. It is not that simple, though. The knitting gauge theory gained traction online. Varying hole sizes supposedly helped craft differently sized gloves. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong again. Roman knitting didn't require circular gauges, and the metallurgy needed to cast these precise bronze objects far exceeds anything required for making mittens. No wool fibers have ever been found inside them, not one strand. Basically, every mainstream explanation collapsed under scrutiny, too. Too fragile for weapons, too complex for toys, too inconsistent for measurement, and yet someone invested significant resources casting them in expensive bronze. This is where it gets disturbing. For over 2 centuries, academia had nothing. No answers, no framework, just a bronze puzzle that shouldn't exist. Then came Norton Disney, the discovery that changed everything. Summer 2023, a quiet English village, volunteers conducting a formal archaeological dig. Dr. Richard Hole, a 20-year veteran of Romano-British excavations, was overseeing soil removal when a volunteer's trowel hit something metallic. The field went silent. When I saw what was emerging, Hole later told colleagues, everyone just stopped. I'd never seen a dodecahedron in person, only photographs. But here's the catch. Unlike most specimens pulled randomly from fields by metal detectorists, this one was excavated scientifically, layer by layer, in what archaeologists call a sealed context. The dodecahedron wasn't randomly dropped. It was deliberately buried alongside 3rd century coins, pottery fragments, and iron tools. The surrounding soil revealed post-hole outlines of a villa or workshop. This wasn't careless loss, this was intentional concealment. And get this, the object's condition shocked everyone. Mirror-like bronze patina, no corrosion, no cracks, soldered mobs perfectly intact. When Hole lifted it into sunlight, its geometry cast dazzling pentagonal shadows layering atop each other. It looked designed to react to light, one team member noted. If you want to keep uncovering the secrets that mainstream archaeology ignores, hit that subscribe button now, because what they found inside this object changes everything. Nobody was prepared for what came next. The 2025 revelation. Early 2025, a joint research paper leaked online before publication. The archaeological community erupted. Dr. Elena Richter's team had conducted extensive analysis on the Norton Disney dodecahedron alongside several museum specimens. Their conclusion defied 2 centuries of assumption. The most iconic dodecahedron discovered in Britain wasn't Roman at all. So, here's the deal. Metallurgical testing revealed a bronze alloy matching pre-Roman Celtic metallurgy. The object dated to at least 150 years before Roman occupation. This single finding demolished every mainstream theory overnight. If the dodecahedron predated Roman conquest, it couldn't have been a Roman tool, couldn't have been a surveyor's instrument, couldn't have been any imperial artifact. It belonged to an indigenous tradition that Rome encountered but never created. Dr. Marcus Webb, Oxford's lead radiochemical analyst, handled the next phase. A 30-year veteran of artifact analysis, Webb had examined everything from Egyptian canopic jars to Viking burial goods. But when the spectrometry results appeared, he asked his assistant to leave the room. Deep within the hollow chamber, his team found microscopic traces of calcium phosphate fused with amber resin and rendered animal fat, combinations strongly associated with funerary practices and necromantic rites in Iron Age Europe. But that wasn't what made Webb go pale. The residue contained a distinct isotope signature: cremated human bone. I've seen human remains in artifacts before, Webb reportedly told colleagues, but never sealed inside something this deliberately constructed. This wasn't contaminated. This was the purpose. Some researchers privately floated a theory that still generates controversy. What if the dodecahedron wasn't just used to honor the dead? What if it was designed to communicate with them? The varying hole sizes, the shadow patterns, the residue of burnt offerings. It resembles nothing in the Roman toolkit, but it matches almost exactly the description of necromantic instruments in Celtic oral traditions. That is putting it lightly. The metallurgy proved it wasn't Roman, but what they found sealed inside suggested it wasn't entirely human either. The pattern no one wanted to see. Once scientists examined distribution rather than function, a troubling pattern emerged, one hiding in plain sight for decades. Roman dodecahedra appear almost exclusively along the empire's western frontier: Britain, Gaul, Germania, regions culturally Roman on the surface, spiritually Celtic beneath. But here's the catch. This distribution mirrors exactly the territories where Rome struggled most to erase pre-Roman traditions. What most people don't realize is where these objects keep turning up: burial sites, river crossings, settlement boundaries. In ancient belief systems, these were liminal places, thresholds between worlds. Rivers marked borders between the living and dead.
These aren't locations where Romans casually dropped tools. These are places where rituals happened. And get this, several specimens show no signs of handling. Edges aren't worn, holes aren't smoothed. They weren't everyday objects, brought out briefly, used for specific moments, then hidden. Roman authorities deeply suspected unauthorized divination. Laws like the Lex Cornelia criminalized magic and unsanctioned religious activity. Objects associated with those practices wouldn't be cataloged, they would be suppressed, quietly removed from public life. The distribution explained where, the residue explained what, but a forgotten manuscript was about to explain why, and why Rome wanted it erased. The Forbidden Manuscript, late 2024. Dr. Isabel Morrow, a paleographer specializing in medieval Latin, was examining forgotten manuscripts in Swiss monastic archives. One document made her stop cold. Catalogued as CFEX 134 Mystère de Dolor, this 12th century manuscript contained a phrase never fully translated, Orbis Divinorum, the divine sphere. The passage described 12 faces pierced and crowned, handled by the whispering ones of the forest, used to hear the voices of the stone sleepers. Then high-resolution UV imaging revealed the full paragraph. Morrow sat down her notes with trembling hands. The text described a bronze object with 12 perforated sides and rounded protrusions at each vertex, a clear match for the dodecahedron. So, here's the deal. The manuscript warned such spheres were not to be shown under the imperial eye and should be buried when the stars turned thrice upon the wolf's shadow. Astronomers matched that phrase to a triple lunar eclipse cycle used in Druidic calendars. The instruction eerily mirrored how real dodecahedra have been found intact underground near celestial markers. Basically, this document preserved fragments of oral traditions the empire tried to erase. The stone sleepers almost certainly referred to the dead. The dodecahedron was a communication device, a sacred vessel bridging living and deceased, and Rome wanted every trace destroyed. Light, shadow, and sacrifice. Scientists at Ghent and Oxford replicated dodecahedra using precision-printed models. They tested how these objects interact with natural forces. Placed in direct sunlight, they didn't cast random shadows. Holes projected circular beams moving in symmetrical patterns. One researcher described it as a solar dial without numbers. During equinox testing, models cast near-perfect pentagonal outlines, rotating slowly throughout the day. But here's the catch. Oxford's radiochemical lab analyzed 5 authentic specimens. 3 contained burnt organic matter, carbon particles, oxidized copper salts, animal blood proteins. Botanical residues included lavender, thyme, and pine resin, all plants associated with funeral rituals. The chemical structure partially matched ancient Gaulish embalming mixtures. This wasn't contaminated, it indicated deliberate burning of ritual substances inside or near the object. The dodecahedron wasn't just geometry, it was a sacred vessel for ceremonies involving fire, scent, and possibly sacrifice. The silence. Despite over 130 discoveries, the dodecahedron has never been the subject of any major funded research project. The British Museum didn't display one until 2014, despite having specimens for decades. A leaked 2022 conference transcript revealed frustration. One speaker called it a career killer. Too fringe to fund, too weird to publish. This object wasn't ignored because it was unimportant. It was ignored because it threatened how we understand ancient Europe. So here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If Rome erased this object from every record, every relief, every document, what else did they bury? And what happens when we dig it all up? Let me know in the comments. Do you think the dodecahedron was a communication device for the dead or something we haven't even guessed yet? Smash that like button if you want more forbidden archaeology and subscribe so you don't miss what we uncover.